Step into the time machine. Let's travel through the past. Mr. Gold's gonna take you on a history blast. From ancient civilizations to the world wars. Get ready, hold tight.
Hey guys, in this video I'm going to give a summary of the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis and its relation to the broader Cold War for our Cold War unit. So to start with, this is the map of the Bay of Pigs in southern Cuba and its relation to Florida. As you can see on the map, pretty much neighbors. I think it's like a 90-minute boat ride from Cuba to Miami. Maybe more. I've never taken that trip, but it's very close. So starting in early 1960, the US, mainly the CIA, already is making plans to attack Cuba. They've already tried to assassinate Castro multiple times at this point, once he takes power in Cuba. And by January 20th, 1961, President Kennedy is inaugurated, and he is given the documents or the information about the potential to invade Cuba. 3 months into his presidency, he approves the plan and the location of the Bay of Pigs. They had other plans of invading Trinidad and different places around Cuba to establish a U.S. presence there. But Kennedy thinks that the Bay of Pigs is the best location because they have a large airfield and they'd be able to unload a lot of troops once the troops take the land. The problem with this plan, though, Kennedy's using a lot of Cuban exiles. He doesn't use any American troops. They're basically training people who have left Cuba that come to America who hate Cuba and want to get revenge. And these aren't going to be the top-notch soldiers. So they want the attack to be a surprise. Somehow Castro gets word of the attack coming. I don't know why. Something must have got tripped up, maybe using all Cubans as an army. They're not airtight when it comes to keeping secrets. And Castro is waiting at the location with 25,000 soldiers. Castro quickly kills, or not Castro himself, but his troops quickly kill 300 of the Cuban exiles, and then they capture the rest, get them to surrender, and Castro imprisons the Cuban exile soldiers for over 1 year. The U.S. is embarrassed severely by this. Kennedy's embarrassed by this. It makes America think that Kennedy's not going to be a good president because he's the youngest president in history at this time, and his very first year on the job, his Cuban exile soldiers are getting captured, and it's a big humiliation. Kennedy's forced to pay $53 million in 1950 dollars to release the prisoners, and it's a big win for Castro. He looks like the more intelligent leader. He's getting like free money just by capturing these Cuban exiles and giving them back to the U.S. And overall it's a big win for him and a big loss for Kennedy. So that is taking place. If you look at the dates on the timeline, all of it's occurring between April 4th, when the plan is approved by Kennedy, and April 19th, when Castro defeats the American invasion. Next major event, Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962. So notice these events. These are all occurring between October 14th and October 28th. So 2 weeks to determine the fate of the civilized world. Because both of these countries have nukes, it really could have gone south and led to a lot of devastation. But as you're about to see, it was averted. So October 14th, an American U-2 spy plane captures photographs of the Soviet Union putting missiles in Cuba. And as you remember the map, 90 minutes from Florida. So if Cuba has missiles, then pretty much the whole southeast United States is in reach of those missiles and able to be attacked. 2 days later, October 16th, 1962, President Kennedy is informed that these missile bases exist, and the U.S. establishes a secret executive committee of National Security Council members to handle this crisis. So they're meeting behind closed doors to try to figure out what to do with our neighbor having all these missiles pointed at the United States. October 22nd, Kennedy announces the discovery of the missile installations to the public, and people begin to freak out. This is like run to the grocery store, get all the canned goods you can for your bunker and in your backyard situation, because America is already under the threat of nuclear war from Russia, and we're already in the Cold War. We're in war with Vietnam. There's just a period of fear already existing. And then you read on the newspaper that our closest communist enemy has missiles pointed at us. People are going to be very sketched out by this. So that's the 22nd. October 24th, the blockade begins. The U.S. surrounds Cuba with ships, makes it so no one can import or export anything from Cuba. And this will cause the tensions to escalate because Soviet ships are approaching and they're forced to turn back. It's like a standoff. Like, are they going to turn back? Or are they going to fight? And so 2 days later, October 26th, Kennedy receives a message from the Soviet leader, Nikita Khrushchev, saying that the USSR would remove missiles in return for a promise of the U.S. not to invade Cuba. Also at this time, the U.S. has missiles in Turkey, the country Turkey, that are pointed at Russia. So they have missiles pointed towards us. The U.S. has missiles pointed towards them. October 27th, a U.S. U-2 spy plane is shot down over Cuba, and the pilot is killed. Rudolph Anderson Jr. is killed. Same day, another message comes from Khrushchev, and he demands the removal of the U.S. missiles in Turkey. So by having that spy plane shot down, it was, from what I've read, it's like 30 minutes away from nuclear warfare, because the U.S. was really upset of the plane being shot down. And people were asking, like, what are we going to do? Are we going to fight back? They shot down our plane. Are we going to shoot down something of theirs? Are we going to bomb them? October 1928, Khrushchev announces on the radio in Moscow that he's agreed to remove the missiles in Cuba in exchange for the U.S. non-invasion pledge. And to this day, the U.S. never did invade Cuba, but they did do dozens of assassination attempts on Cuba's leader, Fidel Castro, to try to remove him. Castro actually outlasted 16 U.S. presidents. Every president from Eisenhower till Obama came and went before Castro eventually died of natural causes. So Castro was very hard to kill by the U.S. Even though they tried to assassinate him with all these different tactics, he kept evading it. And the crisis was evaded. So the U.S. didn't launch any nukes. Russia didn't launch any nukes. Russia removed all the missiles from Cuba. The U.S. removed their missiles from Turkey eventually. And all this was avoided. And because of that, that's why it's known as the Cold War and not World War III or a hot war. It was very close to being violent, but only a few pilots were killed. And the tensions ended up subsiding. So there's your summary of the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Bay of Pigs and how it played a role in the broader Cold War. And I hope this was helpful to you guys, and I hope you guys have a good
Step
day.
into the time machine. Let's travel through the past. Mr. Gold's gonna take you on a history blast from ancient